So the next speaker will be Mr. Sanjay Banga, CEO of Tata Power-DDL.
So with the short time available, let me go with my thoughts rather than presentation. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the chair and the REGI for inviting to share my thoughts. Flexibility on grid. Anything happens, the utility is the most affected one. One, it has to pay penalty to the load dispatch center because of the indiscipline in the schedule. And on the other side, the consumer is the one who is the most happy one because the supply is interrupted. Current regulation from CRC says that utility has to maintain its demand in absolutely right way. So what you demand, what you forecast, you should actually comply to that. And if we see the forces which Ravi mentioned, the EV and PVs of the world has really making life hell for the utility. The CRC regulation of late has become so strict that if you overdraw or even if you underdraw, even at a frequency which is 50.06, you have to pay the penalty, which is the market clearing price of the last day. Once this regulation came into effect, everyone lost. Every utility is paying lakhs and crores of rupees because of this. In 15 days' time, we paid around 20 lakh rupees because of the indiscipline. And this is a situation when the utilities are actually not feeling the pinch of renewable. One study which we got done by E3, they said that the potential of renewable in Delhi, in TPDDL area, is around 200 plus megawatt. And if I assume that even 50% of that comes, then the demand curve of Delhi will totally go haywire. Delhi demand, we serve around 2000 megawatt, and the 2000 megawatt is the summer peak, but the off peak in winter is 400 megawatt. So the difference between the peak demand and the off peak demand is 2000 megawatt to the 400 megawatt, 450 megawatt. That's the kind of the demand. And the current regulation says that you have to predict it very, very carefully. We did some study. we did a study on our distribution transformer, considering that what is going to be the scenario in next 5 to 10 years in terms of demand. And we started increasing the PV penetration on different type of distribution transformers, the residential transformer, the industrial transformer, the mix of residential and commercial transformers. And we find the two impacts. One, as you increase the loading of, as you increase the penetration of PV, in some of the transformers, even at 20-25%, you are violating the grid code in terms of plus 6% voltage or minus 9% voltage. As you further increase the penetration of solar, then you find that at a 50% plus, your technical losses have start increasing because of the reverse flow, and there are the voltage violations. Now, what does it indicate? It indicates that the planning cannot be done by utilities on a yearly basis. The planning cannot be done by utility considering the summer peak and designing the network, because here there is a different generation source at the bottom level which has come and started affecting your demand curve altogether. Then we did the study of EVs, and we find that as the EV penetration goes up, our absolute losses are going up, but our percentage losses are coming down because these are the guys who are actually taking energy and giving us money. We started drawing the curve and started doing analysis that how we can actually meet the challenge of flexibility, or rather I would say the uncertainty of the grid. And we projected our demand considering the PV penetration and considering the EV penetration in next 5 years, we find that our peak demand time is getting changed. So the peak demand which was in summer is now coming in the night. When I'm saying it's coming in the night means it's going to come after 4 years. The moment there is a penetration of around 60-70 megawatt of solar, And there is a penetration of around 30 to 40% of the EVs coming in next 5 years in Delhi. The demand, the consumption pattern is changing to an extent where the summer peak or the winter peak is actually getting shifted. And in summer, because the solar generation will be high from the other sources or in the TPDDL itself, our total demand from the grid will reduce. So when I'm saying total demand, I'm talking the total which I am drawing from the transmission system will completely change in time to come. So how to address this problem? We tried to did so our experiments with grid. We did a demand response program. We took around 300 key consumers whose consumption was more than 100 kilowatt. We segregated their critical load and non-critical load, set up a controller there, started controlling from the remote side, had an agreement with them. When we told them that we will share your load, non-critical load, they agreed. When actually the grid was requiring that, we did that experiment and we find that we were able to reduce around 20 megawatt of demand. So that's the one way I can cope up and keep my schedule and role in balance. Unfortunately, in Delhi, Delhi is a power surplus state. So there will not be any case where actually the demand response will be required because of the market prices. Demand response in Delhi, we find, is not a case. So that on technology point of view, yes, it can be done and the demand can be controlled from the demand response was proven. But in real scenario, we find that the next 5 years, the Delhi actually doesn't require demand response. Our next experiment was with storage. And we set up last month the 10 megawatt, the biggest storage plant in India. And we find that we can tune it. When we want to feed 10 megawatt, we can feed 10 megawatt. We want to charge it and we charge it. And this I am finding is really useful. We are planning to do a study where actually we see that when the 30% PV comes, what should be the storage requirement? And that's a point I want to throw here, and it's a good point that we have a policymaker also here. When India needs 170 megawatt, 75 gigawatt of solar, it's immediately required that what kind of a storage is required. And what kind of a policy is required for the ancillary services? Should we encourage the storage solution to set up as a new generator and schedule it as a part of the ancillary services and meet the complete variation in the demand curve? So that's the one thing. And our experiment with storage is extremely successful and we are finding it very, very useful as such. The other part where how the TPDDL wants to address flexibility is by getting the complete control on the network. And that is where we implemented the advanced distribution management system, controlling all substations, controlling around 25% of our distribution network, and we want to control it 100%. The good point is the regulator has given a permission on that. Reaching further to the consumer, because I personally feel until or unless you bring a consumer on the real-time basis, you actually don't have the control on the network. Going forward that, we started implementing smart metering. Around 60,000 meters are in field, 5,000 per week, so we are adding more. Planning to close this project in next 5 years with all consumers. The regulator has given an approval that you can set up the smart meters for all consumers. So this is how we are trying to address the flexibility in the grid. It's a big challenge. It's an absolutely big challenge because forecasting a demand with the penetration of PV and EVs, and on the top of that, the accuracy of weather, it's really impossible. We tried to do 2 experiments in forecasting with demand with 2 world-class technology players. Tried to do all algorithms, which my technical teams keep telling me, the Monte Carlo simulation and time series and all those things. We find that works well when the weather is okay. But the weather goes slightly different, and in India we have a problem of weather accuracy. The demand varies hugely. 1 degree temperature variation in Delhi creates 200 megawatt difference. And if we don't match that, we pay a penalty in crores and crores. We're trying to deploy technology as much as possible, but considering our experiment with demand response, considering the experiment with the storage, I think storage is a solution in future once the cost comes down and we have really good policies in picture. And the other one is having a complete control on the network and then to the smart meter to the consumer. The flexibility can be addressed to a great extent. Thank you.